and welcome back to historyfoxy. In today's video, we will be talking about Helene, the sister of Empress Elisabeth of Austria. She's mostly known as the sister who was turned down as a wife by the Emperor of Austria in favor of her younger sister. However, Helene did live an interesting life afterwards, and so we will explore Helene's story further in this video. Duchess Helene Caroline Therese in Bavaria, also called Nene, was born in April 1834 as the oldest daughter of Duke Maximilian Joseph in Bavaria and Princess Ludovica of Bavaria. Helene grew up alongside her other siblings in a rather informal environment considering her family's rank. The children were free to roam around during their summers at their residence in Passenhofen, and the older siblings were close in age and got along fairly well, and most of them recounted their childhood to be carefree and happy. Despite the relative freedom the ducal children enjoyed, the family was strictly Catholic, at least on the outside, and expected their offspring to attend church regularly. While her siblings were not too fond of this obligation, Helene was outstandingly pious, and this would continue to be one of her most markable traits. When Helene came of age, it was time to look for a suitable husband. Her mother and her maternal aunt, Princess Sophie of Bavaria, were already making plans to set Helene up with Sophie's son, the Austrian Emperor Franz Joseph. In preparation for the meet-up between the two, Helene had to expend her lacking education for a future empress. Suddenly, she had to take her studies seriously, including learning languages, governmental affairs, and history. Besides, Helene's wardrobe had to be upgraded to make her more presentable. In 1853, it was time to meet Franz Joseph. 19-year-old Helene traveled to Bad Ischl alongside her mother and her younger sister Elisabeth, who was 15 at the time and was only supposed to accompany them. However, things turned out very differently, and Franz Joseph famously fell for the younger Elisabeth, which came as a surprise to everyone. Elisabeth was actually considered too young to be married yet. Even though Helene did keep her composure, it can be assumed that she was distraught to be publicly rejected. Her own mother and her aunt were equally shocked as they saw Helene with her pious and dutiful character as a suitable wife for Franz Joseph, but the decision was made and everyone had to go along with it. The wedding preparations started soon after the women returned to their residence, and we can only imagine how Helene must have felt watching her younger sister on her way to marry an emperor that was made out to be her future husband. It was probably due to Helene's conscientious nature that she put on a brave face through the whole ordeal. After the wedding of Elisabeth, Helene continued to live at her parents' residence. She occupied herself by going to the church multiple times a week and visiting poor people in the surrounding area, whom she often helped out. Besides her charity work, Helene enjoyed painting and embroidery. By the time Helene was 22, the prospect of marriage was looking meek, since in that day and age she was fastly approaching the status of a spinster. While Helene appeared to have come to terms with her fate, her mother Ludovica was adamant to find a suitable husband for her oldest daughter. Her mother arranged for her to meet the wealthy Maximilian Anton Lamoral, hereditary prince of Thurn in Texas. Helene's father invited the Thurn in Texas family to the Passenhofen castle for a hunting party, where Prince Maximilian was introduced to Helene. The couple hit it off from the beginning. Maximilian was intrigued by Helene as she showed no signs of shallowness and was able to hold a meaningful conversation, unlike what he experienced with other young noblewomen. Immediately after returning home, Maximilian proposed his plan to marry Helene to his parents, and they gladly agreed. However, there was one big issue. The Thurn in Texas family was not considered equal for a princess of royal blood and a member of the House of Wittelsbach, so King Maximilian II of Bavaria objected to the engagement at first, but Ludovica asked her influential daughter, now Empress Elisabeth, to intervene. Elisabeth gladly did so, as the relationship with Helene was close after all the turmoil. Eventually, King Maximilian gave his approval, and the engagement between Prince Maximilian and Duchess Helene was officially announced. The wedding ceremony was held on the 24th of August 1858 at Possenhofen Castle. The wedding celebrations were lavish and lasted 4 days. The beautiful bride, Helene, attracted many spectators who wanted to get a glimpse at the popular duchess. The celebrations went from dining to hunting to big fireworks. Her in-laws gifted Helene a necklace worth 160,000 gulden, while her father, Duke Maximilian, made her the present of Castle Biederstein. The newlyweds left Bestenhofen in September for their honeymoon before traveling to their new home in Regensburg in December. The city welcomed Helene with open hearts. Over the next weeks, theater plays and festivities were held in honor of Helene. At this point, Helene was struggling to keep up with her full schedule, as she was already pregnant with her first child. In June 1859, Helene gave birth to her first daughter, Louisa Matilda, followed by a second daughter, Elisabeth, in May 1860. Helene was overjoyed with her daughters, even though she was aware of her duty to deliver a son and heir. Shortly after the birth of her second child, she traveled to Corfu, Greece, on the request of her brother-in-law to visit her sister Elisabeth. The young empress was sent to stay in a warmer climate after falling ill yet again. Emperor Franz Joseph was helpless on how to coerce his wife to come back to Vienna. Helene and Elisabeth were very close. They had many heartfelt conversations during their time in Corfu, usually in English, so no one around would understand them. After making sure Elisabeth was not seriously ill, Helene traveled back home. In Regensburg, her husband Maximilian was waiting anxiously for his beloved wife to return. While Helene was content in her marriage, she is said to have developed feelings for a Polish Uhland hussar. While nothing physical ever took place, the pious Helene felt guilty and ashamed, and was glad to have an escape to Corfu to come back to her senses. Opposed to her sister, Helene put the duties coming with her position before her personal ones. The same year, Helene became pregnant again, and in 1862 she gave birth to the much-desired heir, Maximilian Maria, followed by another son named Albert in 1867. The family life in Regensburg was modest and happy, even though the children were prone to illness, and so was their father, Prince Maximilian. Maximilian suffered from bad health over the years, without being concretely diagnosed with anything. After the birth of Albert in 1867, his physicians finally diagnosed him with kidney malfunction and sent him to treatment in Karlsbad, but to no avail. Maximilian died in 1867 at the age of 35. Helene and her in-laws were mourning deeply, and so did their subjects. The prince and future ruler was very popular, as he was known to be generous. After Maximilian's death, Helene fell into a bout of melancholy. While she still fulfilled her duties as a mother and member of the ruling family, she was seen at the church service every day to mourn her husband. In a letter to sister Elisabeth, Helene wrote that her life was monotonous, and though she was full of sorrow, there were so many obligations on her that time seemed to go by fast. Continuing with charitable activities and finding strength in her religion, Helene pushed through her hard times. She had guardianship of her children, and soon her father-in-law began to include her in governmental affairs concerning the House of Thurn in Texas. After her father-in-law passed in 1871 and son Maximilian was too young to succeed, Helene became the head of the family. In 1867 and 1869, Helene's daughters were married off with pomp. She soon became a grandmother. However, her younger daughter Elisabeth wouldn't recover from giving birth and died in 1881 at the young age of 21. Helene was heartbroken yet again. During that time, she had a chapel built next to her private chambers and appointed a personal priest who was on duty around the clock. Despite fulfilling her duties always came first, Helene did have some leisure time while traveling to the south of Europe. Enjoying the warmer climate, she was meeting up with friends and family, especially with her sister Elisabeth. In 1883, her son Maximilian turned 21 and was set to become head of the family. The young duke was welcomed into his new role with week-long festivities. Maximilian made huge donations towards the poor and sick, and thus enjoyed great popularity. Maximilian was full of plans, however, he suffered from poor health too. It is assumed that his heart had been weakened by scarlet fever in childhood, and he suffered from severe heart spasms. His health deteriorated more and more, which left Helene desperate. She even consulted her brother Karl, who was a renowned doctor by then, as a last resort. But Maximilian was beyond saving. He passed away in June 1885 at the age of 23. Helene and her family were left behind in disbelief. Even though Helene quarreled with her fate, she proved her resilience yet again. Despite her deep sorrow, she had to take over the role as head of the family for another 3 years before her younger son Albert was old enough to succeed. Albert was a good-looking and charming young man who was in good health. In 1888, he took over as the head of the household. Even though he was just as popular and the city of Regensburg was excited for his inauguration, the festivities were cut short in honor of his late brother Maximilian. Helene was finally able to retrieve from all her duties. Her son Albert gifted her Garatshausen Castle at Lake Starnberg to enjoy her retirement. The mother-son relationship was affectionate, so when Albert fell for Archduchess Margarete, daughter of Archduke Franz Joseph, Palatine of Hungary, he asked for his mother's approval. Helene had no objections, and the wedding preparations began. However, Helene became severely ill shortly after. When it became clear that this was serious, Albert called in the whole family. Empress Elisabeth was with her sister until Helene took her last breath on the 16th of May 1890, aged 56. Her burial would become a mass service, as the whole town was up to say the last goodbyes to the charitable late princess. Helene was remembered for all her charity work and her good heart. To this day on, Helene's ancestors claim the leadership of House Thurn in Texas.